Hello everybody, and welcome to my first ever tutorial for Train Sim World 2. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about the brakes for the SD70 ACE. So I've noticed that a lot of people have been struggling with the brakes going downhill on this train. So we're going to talk about how to properly use the brakes on this train. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So here we are inside the cab. We are currently at Hermosa Summit, just outside of Hermosa Tunnel. Before we get moving, I want to talk about the theory behind the brakes in the SD70. So if we go down to our brakes, we usually start with our dynamic brakes. Now, this is usually not enough to hold us at a safe speed. So this is what we compensate with the automatic brakes. However, this is where people run into problems. Once I apply the automatic brakes, the dynamic brakes suddenly begin to lose amps. Why does this happen? Now, the simple answer is that the automatic brake, it applies the brakes to the entire train, including the dynamic brakes are also locomotive brakes. The ACE has a system that makes sure that both air brakes and dynamic brakes can't be applied together on the locomotive, as that can cause problems. So the locomotive compensates by getting rid of the dynamic brakes, but uses the automatic brakes as they are more powerful. But again, this is not what we want. So how do we compensate for this? So to do this, we would need to use our independent brake, and as soon as we apply service to the automatic brakes, we need to set the independent brake to bail off. This will release the independent brakes, and it will keep the dynamic brakes running. So every time you apply additional brakes, you need to go down to the independent brake and set it to bail off. Now this may sound confusing at first, but it will make a lot more sense once we get underway. So how does this compare to a locomotive like the AC4400? Well, the AC4400 has an automated system that identifies if the dynamic brake is on. If it is, and the engineer applies automatic brakes, it'll not apply the air brakes to the locomotive. It'll only do it for the freight cars. And this is what we want. But the ACE does not have this system, so we have to manually do it. And that is the general gist of the brakes. Now, one thing to keep in mind is your weight of your train. So, I attempted doing this tutorial in a manifest train, and that does not work at all. And the reason is that the dynamic brakes are much less effective the higher speeds you're going. And because of this, if you're in a heavy train such as a manifest train, which is usually around 11,000 tons, you are recommended to go only 30 miles an hour. This will make the dynamic brakes effective. But if you're in a lighter freight that's maybe between 5 to 8,000 tons, you should be able to go top speed on this route. So I think we're about ready to go, so I'm going to get the train underway, and I will get back to you guys once I reach the downhill portion of this route. Okay guys, we are now near the summit for Sherman Hill. So we are about to go downhill in about 600 yards, about once we get to that 40 limit. Gotta crossing coming up, so I'm going to sound my horn for that. Okay, so we are now going downhill. So I want to briefly talk about speed. So you need to give yourself a comfort when it comes to going downhill. You want to approach the max speed limit as slow as possible so that you don't overcompensate. Now, overcompensating isn't a bad thing, but it just means that it's going to get to your destination. So that's why you need to make very wise decisions with your brakes. If you feel like you're approaching the max speed too quickly, just apply more brakes until it begins to get slower and slower and slower. We want to try to creep up to our top speed, so then it's much less of a shock if we're already at our top speed. Now, it's possible that I'm probably not even supposed to be going 55 miles an hour in an intermodal train, even though it's only about 8,000 tons. I've done this before at 55 miles an hour, and it isn't too difficult. So like lighter freight trains, you should be fine going top speed using the dynamic brakes, but for like a heavier freight train like this, it may not be recommended. Okay, so in 1 mile we get to go up to 55. Now, for the sake of this, I will be going up to 55 just to prove that I can do it in an intermodal train. But in a manifest train, it's almost impossible because the dynamic brakes just are not enough to hold the train. Even with full service automatic brakes, it's still too much for the train to handle. Now, reasoning behind this is that the dynamic brakes are a lot more effective at slower speeds. So if you're in a heavier train, it's best if you go about 30 miles an hour down this hill. This hill. So we're now 900 yards, so I'm going up to 55. I will get back to you guys once we are able to go up to top speed. Okay, we are now able to proceed up to 55 miles an hour. So I'm going to release the dynamic brakes. And I'm going to do no more than notch 5 power to get us accelerating. I recommend you don't go any higher than that because this train's going to accelerate really quickly, and that's not what we want because we do not want to come to our top speed too quickly. So once we get to about, I'd say 45 miles an hour, I'm going to cut the power and then just slowly prepare the dynamic brakes for braking. So I'm going to cut the power now. I'm going to put my dynamic brake in setup. Now, the dynamic brakes take about 10 seconds to charge up, so that's something you really need to put into consideration when deciding when you want to begin braking. So now it's been about 10 seconds, but I don't need the dynamic brakes just yet. Actually, I do. I'm just going to begin to slowly apply them. Got a crossing comp, so I'm going to sound the horn. Okay, so we're still gaining speed, so I'm going to take it up to about notch 6. And if we're still gaining speed, then I will go into full dynamic brakes, and I'll consider... Okay, so now I can see that we're about to enter the 1.5% gradient. And this is where things begin to get intense. I'm gonna keep the train where it is for a moment, but in a moment I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes. Okay, I think we're already beginning to gain speed, so I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes, and I'm gonna put my brake setting on automatic brakes just so I have it ready. So right now our train's doing okay, but we're gonna lose speed slower and slower and slower, and then eventually we're gonna begin to gain speed. Alright, so we're looking good right now at about 48 miles an hour. I'm going to let up the dynamic brakes just a little bit, just so we can gain a little bit of speed. But again, I don't think the entirety of our train has gone over the hill yet, but I'm sure we're about to gain speed very quickly soon. It looks like we're holding our own for now, but I think things are going to get a lot more difficult as we progress. But so far, we're looking good. So now we're getting speed, so I'm going to go back to full dynamic brakes. I'm going to get my my brake settings set to automatic brakes just to get ready. It looks like we're gaining speed. No? Are we losing speed? I can't tell. It looks like we're gaining speed. We just hit a 1.1% gradient, so things should calm down for a little bit until we begin to head back down. So I'm just gonna leave the train where it is, even if we do lose some speed from this small gradient change. The difference between a 1% gradient and a 1.5% gradient is significant. It can be a major gap just between like how fast you're going, how much brakes you need. It's just such a major difference. We're gonna leave the train where it is for now, and I think I see the grade steepening up ahead. Okay, so now we're down to 50, but that's completely okay. Things are gonna get hard again once a decent chunk of our train has gone over the crescent. So in 2 miles, we gotta have to slow down to 45. Now, in a train like this, I think it's best to slow down very early. So this is where we're gonna begin to do the braking technique that I talked about. So I got my controller set on the automatic brakes. I'm gonna begin to apply the brakes once we go past this signal. I'm gonna apply the brakes. I'm gonna set to about 20%. Now I'm gonna go to my independent brake and go straight to bail off. And as you can see, I have not lost any amps, which is exactly what we wanted. So now we're gently losing speed, which is exactly what we wanted. And we're already down to 45 miles an hour. So I'm going to go under 45 miles an hour just in the event my train suddenly decides to gain speed. So I'm going to... okay, not what I wanted. I'm going to go to my dynamic brake, and I'm just going to release it down to notch 5. I'm actually going to release the automatic brakes. But yeah, we seem to be in a good spot. Oops, did not mean to do that. But it's fine because we're at 39 miles an hour. Okay, I'm going to go back to... we seem to be in a good place right now. I'm going to let the train coast. Okay, we're gaining speed, so I'm going to go up to notch 5. Okay, we're slowly gaining speed, but that's completely okay. Okay, now I'm going to go full dynamic brakes. I'm going to get my... okay, yeah, we are still gaining speed, so I'm going to apply the brakes. I'm going to go about 30%. I'm going to go to bail off. And we're good. We're now gently losing speed. And I am able to put the automatic brake back into minimum application, and we're not going to lose brake pressure because the brakes work slightly differently on this train. Okay, I'm gonna release the brakes until, let's get them up to 85. But it's all about paying attention to the behavior of your train, and you need to respond accordingly to how your train behaves. So now we're down under the 45 limit. 2.5 miles, we get to go back up to 55, and I believe it's just a couple miles after that we have to slow down to 45 again. So I need to keep that in mind. But right now we're looking okay. So it looks like we're now approaching Granite. So now we're about at miles from Cheyenne, but we're looking good right now. A mile and a half we get to go back up to 55, at least I think. Okay, we're still losing speed, so I'm gonna release the dynamic brakes just a bit. I'm gonna take it down to notch 5. If we gain speed, I'm gonna apply some more back. Okay, I'm gonna go back to full dynamic brakes. Looks like our train is gaining speed. I'm gonna have my controller and the automatic brakes in the event I'm still accelerating. It looks like we're still decelerating. Yep, we are. I'll go down to notch 6 for now. Okay, we are gaining speed again, so I'm gonna go up to 7. Okay, we just passed Granite now. And we're definitely getting closer to Cheyenne. Got a crossing coming up, so I'm going to sound the horn. I'm gonna release the dynamic brakes just a little bit because we're still losing speed, but so the track's level out for just a brief moment, but now we're going back down to a 1.5% gradient. Okay, so I'm gonna go back up to 7. Gotta wait till like more weight of the train goes over the crescent. And in 300 yards we get to go back up to 55, although we have to wait for our 1.6 mile train to go past it. So now we just gotta wait for our train to go past the speed change. It's probably gonna take a little while. But we're looking good in terms of speed right now. Oh, never mind, we get to go up to 55 now. In 2 miles we have to slow back down to 45, so we need to keep that in mind. We also got a crossing coming, so I'm going to sound the horn for that. Did a quick horn sequence there. Okay, I'm going to cut the power. I'm going to go put the dynamic brake into setup. Okay, I'm going to begin to apply some dynamic brakes, although the brakes are still charging, but it's fine. It'll begin to apply once it's done charging. Okay, so let's go full power because it looks like we're gaining speed relatively quickly. I'm going to put my brake setting to the automatic brakes. Once we get to 54 miles an hour, I'm going to apply the brakes. It looks like that definitely slowed us down. Okay, but you know what? We need to slow down for the 45 limit, so I'm gonna go up to like 30%. I'm gonna go to bail off on the independent brake. We're gonna slowly lose speed. down nice and gently, which is exactly what we want. We're still looking good in terms of our speed. I'm just going to put the brakes into minimum application, and that's still not going to change my brake pressure. Once I release the brakes, so that is going to change my brake pressure. So I'm going to try to get under, I'm going to get down to like maybe 42 miles an hour, just so I have some wiggle room in the event something was to go wrong. So now I'm going to completely release the brakes. And we're coming up on the 45 limit with no problems at all. Now if we do begin to gain speed again, I will apply some brakes. Okay, so we're at 43. So I'm gonna... No, we're still losing speed. But we are definitely in a good spot right now. Looks like we're losing speed, as a matter of fact. Probably because we're going a lot slower, so the dynamic brakes are slightly more effective than they would be at 55 miles an hour. I don't fully understand the science behind it, but I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way, but I'm not an expert at locomotives, so yeah. So it looks like we're actually losing speed, so I'm gonna go to my dynamic brakes. I'm gonna take off a little bit of brake power. I'm gonna try to get up to at least somewhat close to speed, maybe up to like 42 miles an hour, 43, something like that. I believe soon. I'm guessing we already passed the 55 limit because yeah, there's no upcoming 55 limits anywhere, so I think we passed one already. We just gotta wait for our train to pass by. I'm gonna put it up to 7 to see if we're still gaining speed, and if we are, then I'll go full brakes again. Okay, so far we are looking good. Got a crossing coming up that appears to be unmarked because I don't see it anywhere. Okay, we are getting speed, so I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes again. Just cruising along now. But yeah, so previous 2 attempts trying to drive a manifest train to do this tutorial because it's the heaviest consist you can have on Sherman Hill, and it's physically impossible. So as I mentioned before, be traveling at about 30 miles an hour in a manifest train because the dynamic brakes are a lot. Okay, we are getting speed again, so I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes. I'm gonna get my hand on the automatic brake just in case we hit 45. And it looks like in a mile and a half we get to go back up to 55. Now 13 miles from Cheyenne. I also might as well briefly talk about braking or just stopping in general in a freight train. Now since we're 100 cars of time to slow down, so we rush how fast we're slowing down. We want to try to come in as gentle and as slowly as possible. So I'm going to begin braking about a mile out from our stopping point, because I do not feel like going through a red signal today. So we're going to bring it nice and gently, and then we want to be maybe going like 5 an hour, maybe less, as we creep up to our stopping point, and that should bring us into Cheyenne safely. So now about to come up to the 55 limit. Looks like we're beginning to gain speed again, so I'm going to go full dynamic brakes again. And then since we're already at 45 miles an hour, once we're clear to go up to 55, I'm just going to release the dynamic brakes, but I'm not going to apply any power. Because I think our train's going to gain speed relatively quickly. There's just no need to apply power. And then I have to completely recharge the dynamic brakes again, so it's just pointless. So I'm just going to let the train coast and gain speed by the power of gravity. I'm guessing we should be able to gain speed soon, since since we've already passed the 55 limit. Gotta wait for our 1.5 mile long train to get past. But even though this route is fairly challenging at high speed, it's really what makes this route different and just fun in general. This is like one of the only US freight routes in TSW that like I genuinely find fun to play. I really enjoy the high speed action on this route. It's definitely I think it's the highlight of the route. So honestly, I would recommend this route to anybody. It can be a bit of a learning curve, but I think it's the most enjoyable US freight route. So I'm gonna go back to full dynamic brakes because we're gaining speed. See, what is that? Tanker train? Looks like it. Yep, it is. I forgot what it carries. I think it's ethanol. I'm not fully sure. Okay, we should be able to gain speed soon. There we go. Alright, so I'm gonna put the dynamic brakes. I'm just gonna put it into setup. Because then if I put it into off, it's just gonna completely decharge the dynamic brakes. So if I leave it in setup, I can apply the dynamic brakes right away. Okay, it looks like we got a crossing coming up, so I'm gonna sound the horn. I'm gonna apply some dynamic brakes. I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes just to be safe. Looks like we are gaining speed, so I'm gonna apply the brakes, and I put. Sorry, I can't talk while doing a million things at once. So, just saved myself from speeding. Okay, I'm gonna release it. I'm gonna get it up to like 85. That should keep us in a good place. Okay, it looks like we're still losing speed, so I'm gonna release the brakes. I think we get to go 55 for the rest of the journey until we get into Cheyenne. Yeah, so we're slowly gaining speed again. I just need to heavily monitor my speed. So, I think once we get to 52 miles an hour, I'm gonna put the brakes into minimum application. So just gonna wait. Seems that we're holding our speed. If not, we're just slow. Okay, so now we have successfully gone past the hardest part of the route, which is we're now down to 1.2%, which is much more doable. So now I don't think we're gonna have to worry about using the braking technique we were using. So now I think we just rely on the dynamic brakes. So doing this technique, it takes practice. You need to be super quickly, at least I need to be quickly, just because I'm on controller. Oh, never mind. We're going back down to 1.5%. Okay, never mind. I was just figuring that since we're getting very close to Cheyenne. And I believe like once we get to like Wycon, I believe that's when the grades begin to get down to 1.2%. So again, I just need to heavily monitor my speed. Yes, I definitely just sound like I celebrate too early, not that it really matters. It's not like I'm about to overspeed or anything. So I'm just going to keep the train at 50 miles an hour just to be safe. Sticking to the speed limit, I mean, yes, it definitely is important, but at the same time, you also need to be cautious, because then you could easily overspeed. Like in a passenger train, sticking to speed is easy, but like on a freight train, it's not. That's why leaving some leeway between the top speed and your speed is very important. So we got a crossing home, so I'm gonna sound the horn. Okay, I'm gonna go back up to full dynamic brakes. Looks like up ahead the grades are about to level out. I think I could just be hallucinating. Okay, our train is definitely holding its own without any problems, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so it looks like we're still gaining speed, so I'm just gonna... So if we hit 55 miles an hour, I'm gonna apply do a minimum application. That should be fine for us. Looks like the grade's about to level out. Yep, it's beginning to level out. 1%. We're now at a 1% gradient. Okay, so we are currently about a mile and a half from a 40 limit. So, I'm gonna begin braking in a moment. Since we're on a 1% green, it shouldn't take us as much time to slow down. So, I can probably begin braking when I'm about a mile out, but I'm gonna do a little bit sooner than that just to be safe. I'll start braking once I get, I go past the, this fencing on the right hand side. So, okay, about the speed anyway, so I'm gonna go full dynamic brakes. I'm gonna go about, let's go 30, braking application. I'm gonna go independent brake bail off. And we're just gonna gently lose speed. Okay, I'm gonna release the brakes just a little. I'm gonna put it up to 80 so we slow down a little bit slower so we can just ease out of the brakes. Okay, I'm gonna go up to 85. I think I can just release them now. No, not yet. Right? Actually, you know what, yeah, let's get down to like 38 to 37 miles an hour, just so, because we're still on a 0.8% gradient, so I just want to be safe. I forgot I also have dynamic brakes on. I'm just gonna go notch 5 now. No, I'm gonna put it in setup. Okay, so now we're getting speed again, so I'm gonna go back up to 5. And I think we should be able to control the train now just on the dynamic brakes. So we're now 2.5 miles from Cheyenne. Okay. I'm gonna gently ease off the dynamic brakes because we lost a little bit of speed. Looks like in a mile we have to slow down to 35 anyways. I'm not gonna worry about it now. I might just use the dynamic brakes just to slow us down to 35. But we'll see. Just gonna slowly let the train creep back up to 40. Okay, I'm gonna add a little more brakes because it looks like we're gaining speed somewhat quickly. Alright, there's our cue to slow down to 35. We're only 2 miles an hour over the limit, so I'm just gonna use full dynamic brakes to slow us down. And it's doing us just fine. Okay. Take us down to like 4. I'll keep it at 5 just so we lose a little bit of speed. Okay, now I'll go down to 34, or notch 4. Look at a crossing. Apply some more dynamic brakes because it looks like we're gaining some speed. Alright, so we're now just a mile and a half out from Cheyenne. So, I'm going to begin braking about, I'd say a little under a mile. Because our train's having some pretty strong braking right now. So I don't think we need the full mile, but I want to get our train down to a fairly slow speed within maybe less than half a mile, so maybe like 15 miles an hour. And then we'll just slowly creep the train in. And it looks like the gradient's about to level out. Okay, so now we're going to begin braking down to Cheyenne. So I'm going to do about notch 5 dynamic brakes, and I'm going to begin applying the automatic brakes. So as you can see, I apply the automatic brakes and then put the independent brake in the bail off. And let the train slowly creep down to about, I'd say about 15 miles an hour, possibly less. Just so we don't have to worry about going past the red signal. Yeah, we're definitely looking good right now. Just come in nice and gently. Might put a little more brake on. Yeah, I'm gonna put a little more brake on. Just so we can slow down a little bit quicker. I can now see how I now have a visual on the red signal. We're looking okay right now. I'm going to try to get the train down to like 10 miles an hour. I'm going to put the brake into minimum application just so I can begin to slowly release the brakes. So I'm going to release them and I'm going to get them up to like, go 83. 85. Alright. I think now I can just do this slowly. Okay, I'm gonna release. Oh yeah, we're also on a flat gradient now, so I could just stop now with the dynamics. Okay, oh, part of our train's still on the 0.8% gradient, so I'm gonna bring some of the dynamic brakes back. Try to find like a balance. Just want to bring the train in nice and gently, so I don't go spatting. So notch 2 seems to be doing us alright, so I'll just be going in between notches 2 and 3 for now. And once we get a little bit closer, I'm going to take the train down to like 5 miles an hour. Okay, I'm going to take the train now down to 5 miles an hour. I want to have the most gentle possible stop it possible. Gently losing speed now. And then if you are stopping with just the dynamic brakes, as soon as you come to a stop, apply the automatic brakes because the dynamic brakes aren't supposed to hold you, like just to keep you stopped. So that's something to keep in mind. Coming in nice and slowly now, about 3 miles an hour. Might undershoot it just a bit, just to be safe, but we'll see what happens. Okay, alright, so now I'm gonna just use the automatic brakes for the rest of the way in. And here we are. We have made it to Cheyenne. Well, we have officially made it to Cheyenne. So I hope you all enjoyed this somewhat quick tutorial. I apologize if this isn't the best tutorial ever, especially because of like my headphones making like all this static noise and stuff, and sometimes like the video getting corrupted and stuff. Fortunately, there's not much I can do about that, but the whole point of this video was just to teach you guys how to brake downhill in the Ace. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope to maybe do more tutorials in the future. I'm hoping that I can make them a lot better quality next time around. Like, I'm probably gonna, because like the intro was completely unscripted, so next time around I might just do like a more scripted intro. But other than that, I think this is a pretty okay tutorial. So if you guys want to see more tutorials, consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.